Alright, so this is going to be a difficult video for me to film, because right up front, I have to admit, I was wrong about something.
I was wrong.
Yeah, I know, that happens so infrequently, but I was wrong about Andor. That show is actually great.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
Now, in my defense, I didn't actually watch Andor until recently. I just avoided it because I thought it was going to be like every other piece of Star Wars media that's been shoved down our throats for the past couple of years. Everyone said The Mandalorian was great, and then I watched a couple episodes of that, and it was trash. And then I have heard very mixed opinions, let's say, on every other Star Wars show that's been coming out, like The Acolyte and the Book of Boba Fett and stuff. And I'm not just talking about the obnoxious culture war bullshit that accompanies all that. Like, that I can mostly tune out, but even setting that aside, largely, I've heard mixed things, and I don't know, ever since The Rise of Skywalker, I don't care that much about Star Wars media, but Andor is a very good show. It's a political thriller about fighting a fascist government, and it puts almost all Star Wars media to shame. Like, not just the Disney Star Wars stuff, which has been oversaturated for the past 10 years. I mean just all Star Wars media in general. The original stuff, the expanded universe, like, Andor is better than almost all of it. Now, part of the reason why so much Disney Star Wars stuff is bad is not just because it's oversaturated, it's because it's not about anything. And what I mean by that is it's just an excuse to reference glorp shitto over and over again. Like, it's just, hey, here's a reference to this other thing that you know. Hey, here's a reference to this thing you used to like when you were a kid. That means this is good, right? We're just going to center the entire story around this one reference. You know, why bother inputting new characters and new stories and exploring this wide, gigantic universe in any way? Let's just keep going back to the same 8 or 9 things over and over and over again. Reference! Like that. That's what all of this Star Wars shows have felt like to me. That's also what the Cosmere is becoming. That's a separate discussion, but oh my gods, Wind and Truth was difficult to get through. We'll just leave it at that. But Star Wars is at its best when it has really strong, identifiable themes. Like, that's what I'm saying when I say that this new stuff isn't about anything. Like, the original trilogy had a very simple theme. It was just about people fighting against an authoritarian government, and it was saying, like, hey, freedom is worth fighting and sacrificing for. Like, again, very simple, but it's still good. And then you had the prequel trilogy. Now, the prequels are not very good movies. They're horribly made in just about every way. The dialogue, acting, the story structure, like, they're not very good movies. However, they are still kind of held together because they are still about something. It's about the way that the Republic fell into fascism. And it's about how democracy doesn't die, it's willingly given away. Like that famous line,
"So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause."
So I would say personally that the prequel trilogy is a good story told in a very, very bad way. Like, it needed to work on the execution of that central theme quite a bit, but at least that central theme is there. And then the sequel trilogy is bad largely because, at least for me, because it's not really about anything. It doesn't have that undertone or that subtext. It's just dudes shooting lasers at each other in space, which can be fun sometimes, but like there's just nothing else there, so it feels like it's not about anything. There's events that occur, but it's not about anything. And The Last Jedi did bring in some new ideas, at least, and sure, that movie was rough around the edges, but it brought in some new ideas, at least, and it was trying something new, but then Rise of Skywalker just retconned everything. But back to good Star Wars stuff, the Knights of the Old Republic video game and the Darth Bane trilogy, which were both written by Drew Karpyshyn, also fantastic, because those are basically about the Sith ideology and how that clashes with the Jedi ideology. And the thing about the Sith ideology is that before the Knights of the Old Republic game, they were kind of just evil for the sake of it, but then in the game, we can kind of see why people follow it, and when you stop and think about it, you realize, oh, it's just fascism. You know, the Code of the Sith literally says, through power I gain victory, through victory my chains are broken. Like, the dark side sets them free, but then you see how they actually do that in the real world. It seems to always involve enslaving everyone else. Like, it's just fascism, guys. And then there's all the stuff with the Yuuzhan Vong, which I'll admit I haven't read all of that, which is why a couple of years ago when I spoke about how Star Wars, this old Star Wars expanded universe is usually bad, I didn't really talk about the Yuuzhan Vong, but the stuff I have read from the Yuuzhan Vong is good, from what I remember, and the whole central theme of that is that the universe is really big and mysterious, and there's still a lot of stuff out there that we don't understand. Like, the Yuuzhan Vong have this weird organic technology that we've never seen before, and they don't have the Force inside them, which all living things are supposed to. What does that mean? And I don't think we ever get a proper explanation of how that happened or what it means, but hell, it's something weird and different. Like, the Yuuzhan Vong are the only alien species in Star Wars that truly feels alien. But what I'm saying is that Star Wars is best when it's actually about something, when it's trying to say something. It doesn't have to be super overt and in your face, but it's still saying something. And Andor is like that. It's similar to the original trilogy. You know, again, it's the origin of the rebellion that we see in those movies, and it's basically just about how freedom is worth fighting for. You know, they're fighting against a fascist authoritarian regime. Here's why people decide to do that instead of just keeping their head down and moving about life in their own way. And also here's how they do it. And it, like, you know, it's just about something. And one thing I loved about Andor is that while it is about the rebellion the same way that it is in Rogue One and the original trilogy, I think it's better in some ways because the rebels are actually guerrilla fighters. You know, they're actual insurgents fighting against an overwhelming, powerful foe. See, when I watch the original Star Wars movies, like, I like those movies, but the rebels never really felt like underdogs to me. You know, it feels like, okay, the Empire has a bunch of fighter jets and stuff. Well, not jets, but fighter spaceships and stuff. Well, we also have fighter spaceships and stuff. Ours just look different. The Empire has giant capital ships that can destroy a bunch of stuff. Well, we also have giant capital ships that can destroy a bunch of stuff. Ours just look different. And so they never really felt like underdogs to me personally. However, in Andor, they do feel like real guerrilla fighters. You know, in real life, in guerrilla warfare, the whole reason that insurgents use that style of warfare is because they can't fight toe-to-toe with their enemy. They don't have fighter jets, they don't have tanks, they don't have artillery, so they find ways around that. In Andor, they don't have giant bases that they can operate from like they do on Hoth in Empire Strikes Back or anything like that. They are just scared dudes with guns and they are hiding. Like, they have to keep their identities secret. They go to great lengths to make sure that the Empire security forces, that is the military and the police, particularly the Imperial Security Bureau, the secret police, don't find them. Because we know that bad things will happen if they get found. My personal favorite example of this being showcased is during the battle/massacre on Gorman near the end of Season 2, right? Like, they have a battle breaks out, and at first, like, the insurgents and the Imperial troops are pretty much on the same footing, or at least they seem to be on the same footing. Like, sure, the insurgents are losing and getting pushed back, but it's really just dudes with guns shooting at each other on both sides, but then a bunch of KX droids come out, and they are completely unstoppable. Like, the heroes are shooting at them, but their armor is too heavy to penetrate, and they don't have any way to protect themselves once the droids come close. Like, that is, in the real world, the equivalent of that would be like trying to fight a tank. Like, a normal person is not going to have the capability to bring that thing down. It's going to either roll over you or just blow you away with its giant freaking cannon. And that's how it is to fight as an insurgent. And so, in Andor, the Empire feels intimidating. They feel competent most of the time, but when they act incompetently, that's pretty clearly deliberate. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Or how about that scene in Season 1 where the TIE fighter flies overhead and it feels freaking terrifying. That thing feels huge and intimidating, and you just realize, like, this is what they're up against. That's just one TIE fighter. The Empire has thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of those things. How could we ever possibly hope to go up against those guys? And it's just that one short moment which helps make the entire Empire feel big and scary. At the same time, it is very, very fragile. I mean, they have that guy's manifesto, which they repeat more than once, where he straight up says tyranny is unnatural and it requires constant upkeep. And at the same time, it rarely inspires loyalty, because the ISB and the military and everything else in the Empire is plagued by infighting. For example, we mainly follow the ISB through a character named Dedra, and she is unable to investigate rebel activity properly in Season 1 because, well, that's out of her jurisdiction, and she can't just ask this other guy, like, hey, can I have access to some of this information? It pertains to one of my cases, because he's going, well, that'll make me look bad. You're just trying to steal credit for my work. And like that sort of culture in intelligence services or police agencies or whatever, or militaries or anything like that, that makes it impossible for people to really do their jobs. But that's also how dictatorships function by default. More people need to read The Dictator's Handbook. It's a very good book for a lot of reasons, but basically the idea is to make sure everyone is fighting each other so they don't unify and overthrow whoever's on top. Like, if you're in a dictatorship, you want your underlings to be fighting each other. You don't want them to work together, really. And while that's good for whoever's on top, it's not good for the system as a whole. It makes it more fragile. And on top of infighting, corruption is the order of the day. Like, we see from the very beginning of the show that the police and the people tasked with, quote, keeping order are just openly corrupt. Like, they take bribes, they steal, they break the law all the time, and that's just how shit works. But that also makes the system weaker, and it makes everyone lose faith in it. In the first episode, when Cassian Andor kills 2 cops, their boss tries to sweep it under the rug. And the thing is, he's not totally wrong to do so, because he does explicitly say, like, yeah, those guys were clearly trying to shake someone down, they were breaking the law, they messed with the wrong guy, and it backfired on them. And yeah, he was not wrong when he said that, but also he was only trying to sweep it under the rug because it would be a pain in the ass to investigate it, and it would make him look bad, because it would make it look like his crime rate was higher than he wants it to look. So, yeah, it's corruption, but he's not totally wrong. But the point is, there isn't any real law and order in areas that are controlled by the Empire. Most people really only comply with the Empire and with imperial authority because the Empire pretends to be fair. People say, okay, as long as I follow the rules, I will be treated fairly, but that's also very easily exposed as a lie. For example, the whole prison system is a joke. Like, the prison and justice system is a joke. Like, Cassian Andor was literally just walking down the beach at one point. There was a crime scene somewhere nearby, and so he gets sentenced to 6 years hard labor in a prison. And if you're thinking, well, okay, that's really arbitrary and unfair. He clearly did not get a fair trial. But at least when his 6 years are up, then he gets to go home, right? Well, that's exposed as a lie, too. Like, the Empire is not going to let prisoners go, ever, because they're using them as slave labor, so they're just going to transfer them somewhere else and then continue using them. And ultimately, that's what leads to the prison breakout. Like, the riot and the breakout, which Andor is a big part of, but he's not really the leader. Like, that's how he gets Andy Serkis to agree to this. And by the way, Andy Serkis, given the performance of a lifetime, even though he's in a couple of episodes, like 3 episodes, like, good job, Andy Serkis.
How far we get, how many of us make it out, all of that is now up to us.
Right now, get up. Stop the work. Get out of your cells. Take charge. They don't have enough guards, and they know it.
We are being transferred to some other prison to go and die.
There is one way out.
Right now.
Another example being the Gorman genocide. Like, the Empire deliberately tries to facilitate insurgent activity by treating the Gormans unfairly and trying to squeeze them more and more and more until they lash out, and then they use it as an excuse to kill everyone on the planet, which is exactly what they wanted to do and were planning to do from the beginning. Now, the last couple episodes of this show, and to a lesser extent the last season altogether, is really just about the characters going around and trying to find out information about the Death Star, and so there isn't really a climax to the show. Like, and I get it, the climax is meant to be Rogue One, but that's a movie that came out 9 years ago, so it's a little disappointing that we don't really get one in Andor. But still, I did rewatch Rogue One after seeing this, and it's a good movie. You know, again, I feel kind of similarly to this, how I feel about The Last Jedi, where it brings in some new ideas and does some different stuff with the Star Wars franchise, which I like. It is still a little rough around the edges, and the script needed some work, but overall, I did like it, and I think that it's a very good way to end the story of Cassian Andor. So that's what Rogue One is about. You know, it's about fighting tyranny, it's about fighting an authoritarian system, it's about what it's really like to live under an authoritarian system and why people would want to fight against it as well. That's an important distinction, because the original trilogy doesn't have a whole lot like that. Like, we see the Imperials do straight-up massacres and summary executions and stuff in Andor. We don't see a lot of that in the original movies. Like, the one thing we kind of get is when stormtroopers come to Luke's house and murder his aunt and uncle when he's away. But that is small potatoes compared to a lot of the stuff they do in Andor, believe me. So that's what the show is about, but also it works really well because the characters and the acting are just fantastic. Like I mentioned Andy Serkis in the prison episodes earlier. He's, oh my goodness, what is he doing? He's so freaking good, and he's barely there. But, I mean, on top of that, we have Cassian Andor. He is a normal dude who really gets sucked into being a rebel. Like, he's already kind of in the criminal underworld beforehand, but he's not looking to cause any trouble or overthrow the government or anything at first. He wants to just leave. You know, like, in the first couple episodes, he gets in trouble, but then he gets some money and is able to flee, and he would just keep doing that. He would just stay in hiding if it were up to him, but the Empire just keeps hitting him and keeps hurting him until eventually he decides, you know what, I'm willing to risk everything. I am willing to risk life and limb to take these guys down. Diego Luna's performance is perfect. Like, we see him go from being weaselly and kind of non-committal in the first couple episodes, and we totally buy his transformation into being a total freedom fighter, which we see in Rogue One again. But also, in Rogue One, he's a freedom fighter. That doesn't mean he's a good person. He still does some bad stuff, but that's part of what makes him an interesting character. And speaking of being a good person but doing bad stuff, Luthen Rael, played by Stellan Skarsgård. How the fuck did they get a Skarsgård to be in a fucking Star Wars show? I don't know, but he rocks it. One thing that did stand out to me and was a little strange to me when I was a kid is that the rebels in the Star Wars movies are referred to as the Rebel Alliance, and I was like, alliance of what, though? Doesn't that mean there's multiple different groups working together? And in this show, that's exactly what we see. Like, the rebellion kind of sprang up organically in a lot of different places, but it's, you know, a lot of different groups of people who are just kind of working locally, and Luthen is the one who actually works as a go-between and gets them all to work together towards a common goal. So that's why it's called the Rebel Alliance. And I thought, okay, that's actually a very clever way of doing it. It's a bit of a retcon, sure, but I like it. The name makes sense now. But just like Andor himself, Luthen is not really a nice person. Like, he does some pretty nasty stuff. He sacrifices some of his allies in order to protect his other allies at several points, and he does murder people. He steals, he lies, he does bad things, and he admits to himself and to the audience that, yeah, he's not a good person, but at the same time, it has to be worth it because the cause is greater than all of them. And rebellion, yeah, it's not pretty. Like, it's still better than the alternative, which is to just leave it alone and live under the system, but it's not pretty. And the way that he's able to switch from being charming and nice to people to also just being scary at times, like he's outright scary at times, it's awesome. It's awesome how he's able to do that, and I liked it. And I'd also like how, even though at first, whenever he is shown bald Stellan Skarsgård, he's, you know, in rebellion mode and he's trying to hide his identity, whereas when he has his hairpiece on, he's being an antique dealer and he's in high society and he's trying to be nice. But as time goes on, you realize that, like, okay, even when he's being an antiques dealer, that's just an act, because he's still perfectly capable of being a rebel when he has his hair on and everything. And I don't know, I really like that. At the beginning of the show, Dedra and Cyril seem like decent people who are just working in a bad, corrupt system. Like, they really do seem like they're just trying to keep law and order, which is a good goal to have, an admirable goal to have. But over time, we realize, like, okay, no, that's not it at all. Like, Dedra is really just out for herself. That's made very clear. She's out to advance her own career and to make more money and everything. And we see, especially in Season 2, that she lives in a super fucking nice house on the upper levels of Coruscant. So she is being rewarded for her efforts. At the same time, Cyril is genuine in his desire to maintain law and order. That's why he goes against his boss's orders in the first couple episodes and tries to arrest Cassian Andor, which does bite him in the ass, yeah, but later he starts working with the ISB, and near the end of Season 2, he realizes that he's been duped into helping with an actual genocide, and he's horrified by it.
We can discuss this later. Huh?
It's too late already.
Please.
Don't. You tell me it's a rumor, and I will throw you out that window.
And he doesn't really get a chance to actually say, fuck the Empire, I'm joining the Rebels, or anything like that. In fact, he immediately goes after Cassian Andor again. But we realize at that point, he's motivated more by obsession with catching this guy who evaded him than he is with actually trying to maintain law and order. But at the same time, he's a better person than most Imperial officers because the idea of genocide is bad. You know, he doesn't want to partake in that. Then we have Orson Krennic. Oh my gods, what? I don't know exactly what the difference is between the way Ben Mendelsohn was directed / written in this versus in Rogue One, but he is 10 times better in Andor than in Rogue One.
Is the urgency of the situation not palpable? 2 years of Jeddah working group printouts in your file. Supervisor Young spent 3 hours last night logged into your account. How does one balance such passionate competency with the mindless decision to confront Luthen Rail on your own? If you're not a rebel spy, you missed your calling.
And he's only in 1 season, and he's barely in that season. He has like 20 minutes of screen time, spread across 12 episodes. And he dominates every scene that he is in. I mean, just, he feels larger than life. And I think a big part of that is that he is the highest Imperial official we see in this show. Whereas in Rogue One, we see Darth Vader above him, and when he interacts with Darth Vader, he gets choked out and he kind of looks like a little bitch. Whereas in this, he has just this intimidating presence every time he's on screen, and it just works so freaking well. I mean, the last time I saw a military / intelligence operative have this much presence on screen was Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards. And I don't like that movie very much, but I do like Christoph Waltz in that movie. I have to stop there because honestly, every character in this show is great. Even the ones that are only around for an episode or two. Like, they're just all really, really good. And the show overall just feels very gritty and grounded and maybe not realistic, but it just works so well. Like, this is how you fight an authoritarian regime. What else can I even say, man? Like, this is the best Star Wars thing to come out in a long, long time. I don't know if I'd call it the best Star Wars thing ever. I think Knights of the Old Republic and the Darth Bane trilogy might still have it beat, but man, this is the best thing that they've released in a long time, because fuck Glorp Shitto, okay? That's how I'm gonna end this video. Fuck Glorp Shitto, fuck making references to old stuff that we loved before. Like, just tell unique stories in this universe. Get away from the Skywalkers and the Emperor and everything. Don't be afraid to go forward or backward in time a lot. You know, and also just make the stories about something. Like I said, the stories can be about how democracy backslides into fascism. It can be about how fascism can be a seductive ideology, and it kind of shows why people fall into it. It can be as simple as, yes, this is what it's like to live under an authoritarian regime, and this is why people fight against it. Like, make it about something. It doesn't have to be super in your face. You know, a lot of people love to bitch and moan about how these sequel trilogies are woke SJW trash or whatever because they have women and black people in them, but really, they're just not good because they're not really about anything. There's no underlying themes or foundations for the story. And that's why the sequel trilogies don't really have a story. They just have plot events that occur. There's just lasers shooting back and forth. You know, and in fact, that's why a lot of modern media feels like just pointless slop, because that's all it is. It's not about anything. That's all. So fuck Glorp Shitto, not just in Star Wars, but outside of Star Wars as well. That's all. I really liked Andor. Check it out if you haven't already. Like, I spoiled some stuff here, but I didn't spoil everything. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. Ahoy! Thank you for watching this far. If you didn't watch this far, but you still wound up here somehow, then I still appreciate you. You're great. All these names you see here, these are my patrons. You can go over to Patreon and pay $1 a month or more if you feel like it. Get access to stuff like one exclusive video every month, early access to videos, things of that nature. My $10 and up patrons are Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santodes, Carolina Klee, Lexi DeLorme, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. A5013, Proscriptions of Dwojang, Psych XX, Slumbering Jellyfish, Observing Outer Space, Tesla Shark, Toa Michael, Vevictus, and Wesley, as well as all the other names here. I appreciate all their support. Also appreciate all of my people over on YouTube who are channel members. Yeah, you can become a channel member and get most of the same bonuses that you get from Patreon. You just don't get your names here. And you know what? Everybody who just watches my stuff, you're all great. I couldn't do this without you. Please rate this video, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my merchandise, which you can go down below and look at. And, you know, all that other stuff I'm supposed to say here. Have a lovely day, and goodbye.